Gideon and I were given the unique privilege of, roles as head instructors of the Gracie Academy when we were very young. I was 18 or so, Gideon was 20, just out of high school. And we were here teaching full time, running the show. That was over a decade ago. And it's just been really interesting to see how much we've grown, not as a school and curriculums and way we teach and perpetuate, all that is great. But what's been crazy to watch throughout this process has been how many people have quit the Jiu Jitsu journey. And it took us a while to realize why they were quitting, what age they were quitting at on average. And we've now kind of come up with this theory that, why people are dropping off. And we want to share it with you guys because, if you're over 40 years old, you probably thought about quitting many times. If you're under 40 years old, you will think about quitting in the very near future when the time comes for you. So we've come up with what we call the 5 rules to roll with if you want to train for the rest of your life. And these are rules, that you have to accept. You don't really have a choice. Our grandfather accepted them without knowing. It's just part of his life and part of his way. He never taught these to us. He never explained them to us like this. But having observed our grandfather and other uncles and our father, we that's where we derive these from, straight up. So they embody all of these.
He never taught us, but he did teach us by leading through example.
Yeah, 100%.
And today we are, applying these rules to our everyday life.
Rule number 1, know your Boyd belts. Rule number 2, pass the guard. Rule number 3, acknowledge the ego. Rule number 4, respect the roller coaster. And rule number 5, follow the leader. You guys, rule number 1, know your Boyd belts. We have a very good friend, instructor of the Gracie Academy, black belt, who recently passed away a few years ago. His name was John Boyd, and the coolest guy you could ever imagine. He was 66 years old and was just totally exceptional human being on and off the mat. Everyone's motivation. You came to the mat, when you saw John rolling that day, you were like, yeah, I want to be like him when I get older. Like straight up, he was the man, And John was a black belt. And there were many times in his later years that John started around 40, 50, 60, around 45, mid-40s, and trained until mid-60s, so almost 20 years. And John would come to my office as a black belt and say, Henner, man, I roll with a younger kid today, a mid-20s, younger blue belt, and I couldn't beat him.
Like he let you down.
Yes, that's what the tone was I'm a black belt, he was a blue belt, and I couldn't beat him. I said, who was it? And he gave me the name of the guy. And the guy was like 220. John's 160. The guy's 220, 60 pounds heavier at least. And 40 years younger. But just about the weight alone is ridiculous. Yeah. And because of John and seeing the challenge he was having with comprehending why a black belt like him couldn't just annihilate a blue belt or any blue belt, I began kind of exploring this idea that, and to me holds very true, that size matters, weight matters, strength matters. All these things are factored into someone's ability. Age matters in considering someone's threat to you in a physical altercation. And the scale we've come up with is just to make it very simple to understand is, and I told this to John, I said, John, every 20 pounds equals a belt. And every 10 years equals a belt. So let's just say they were the same age. It was John and another 60-year-old who weighed 220 pounds. And John was 160. This guy's a 60-pound advantage, which means what? 20, 40, 60, which means blue becomes purple, brown, black. Do you understand? Belt, belt, belt. 60 pounds, 3 belts. So a guy who's a blue belt at 220 is a black belt to John Boyd at 160. That's assuming they're the same age.
Yeah, and what that means is that when they roll, it'll be like that difficult. As difficult as John beating a 60-year-old black belt who's his same weight.
Who's been training as long as he has.
Doesn't
very
mean
sharp.
John can't win in the end, or that the guy's gonna have the technique that will, submit John, but John might be stuck underneath him. He might be so tired at the end of that roll. So it's very true. And even us.
It's us for us.
We have sometimes, whether it's a police officer or a soldier or just an average kid, an athlete, football
comes
player,
in athletic.
And they're 285 pounds, 300 pounds football player, and we might
and they're no belt. This is a 0 belt.
It might take us sometimes 8 minutes.
Yes.
To beat this guy.
Yep.
Who's stronger than anybody that we know, and it takes 8 minutes sometimes for me to beat you or you to beat me.
Yes.
So we give that football
Yes.
player black belt status.
Yes.
Now, are they really a black belt
No.
in technique? No.
No.
Do they know jiu-jitsu? No.
What's a good historically sound example of this? Look at Helio versus Kimura. Look at more targeted Hoist versus Dan Severn.
There you go.
15 minutes to submit the beast. And he was a 0 belt in jiu-jitsu. Let him know one choke, one rear naked, one guillotine, one footlock. He'd never done a submission in his life. And Hoist took 15 minutes to beat the guy. Why? He was 270. That's 100 pounds heavier than Hoist. So 100 pounds means white, blue, purple, brown, black, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Right? So he was basically toe-to-toe with Hoist for 15 minutes. Hickson versus Zulu. Zulu was not a jiu-jitsu practitioner.
Yeah.
He was a savage beast of a guy who just freaking went crazy against young Hickson. And Hickson took a good, I don't know how exactly, maybe 10, 12, 13 minutes to beat this guy. So it was a couple rounds, right, of 10 minutes. Moral of the story is what? Even at our peaks, we acknowledge the Boyd belt system, which is someone who is younger or stronger or heavier has an advantage. Now, some are saying, well, that's crazy because, I thought jiu-jitsu was good against people of all sizes. Well, that's exactly the point. Why do we train? To neutralize the Boyd belts of society. Because everyone is born and has what we call the natural jiu-jitsu, which is their natural athleticism. And a lot of times as you get older in jiu-jitsu or you're smaller and you're going to get someone, much heavier or much younger, much more athletic, you think, no, I'm a black belt, I got to beat them. No. If you're a black belt and you're 40 years older and they're a blue belt, but they're your same weight and they're 40 years younger, and you can roll with them for 5 minutes and nobody gets tapped, or you get tapped one time in 5 minutes against this blue belt, guess what? You're amazing. Can we emphasize this any stronger, and are we good?
I think we're good. We'll recap everything in the end.
That's what's up. So rule number one, if you plan on surviving till you're 95 with jiu-jitsu in your life, is you must respect the Boyd belts. Our grandfather did, and you should as well. John Boyd did. And once we had this talk, he was off and running. Next, he would come back to me and say, Henner, I rolled Vince. Man, he's 240, big guy, blue belt. He didn't catch me. It was his new victory.
Success.
New victory, new success. Rule number two, pass the guard. Well, and what we mean by passing the guard is not pass the guard, not open guard, butterfly, de la hiva. No, we're talking about the idea that you have to acknowledge that in the Gracie family, it's a very known thing. One day your son will beat you.
And one day your student will beat you.
Right, and that's the comparison I was going to make. Students who are less knowledgeable and less skilled and submittable by them today are their jiu-jitsu children.
Yes.
They're their sons.
Yes.
They're maybe newer in the game and they're not as good as you, and you're at your peak, you're 33 years old, you're strong, you're athletic, you're whatever, or you're 45 years old and you're a purple belt and you're dope and you're catching new white belts and blue belts. What I'm saying is those people are going to get better. And there comes a point where this happens. Right? And you're getting older and you're not able to catch up physically and not as flexible and not as athletic, not as endurance, but your technique is still good and you're still getting sharper, but the young guys are growing faster because they have that optimal body athleticism to grow with, and they're just fueling it with great technique and great knowledge, and they're just dedicated training every day, and you're training twice a week because you're on that more maintenance mode. That guy's going to pass you up. Okay? Now that's essentially what's going to happen is people that you used to beat in the Gracie family, fathers beat the children, tap us out forever, and then eventually the sons get good enough, the parents get old enough, and that's the passing of the guard. And accepting rule number two is the second critical factor in your success in a long life full of jiu-jitsu. Because imagine if they don't accept that their jiu-jitsu children or their jiu-jitsu new belts are going to eventually tap them out one day. If they think it's going to be like this their whole life.
It's going to be very stressful, and you're going to
The day will come. The day will come. And then what's going to happen that day?
They're going to not do jiu-jitsu anymore.
Why?
Because they're falling short of their expectations.
Yes, and you expect to be able to beat that guy forever.
It's
You're robbing
unrealistic.
yourself.
That's not nature. So you have to be careful that your expectation, with your relationship with jiu-jitsu is going to ruin the relationship.
Yeah.
And I expect, for example, my guard pass to work forever. But then I get in someone's guard who's been training for 4 years, and I'm a black belt, and I can't pass their guard. Now all of a sudden, jiu-jitsu and I have conflict because jiu-jitsu let me down. So therefore, what do? I separate from jiu-jitsu. And that's back to the story of these black belt instructors or even black belt students. It's okay. Let it go. Pass the guard. Let somebody pass your guard. Let somebody escape your mount.
That's
don't
a
have to
good
fight
point.
so hard. You
That's
don't
a
need to
good-
fight to resist everything all the time.
And by them allowing the passing of the guard before the guard is actually passed, too many guard passes. Are they connecting with this?
Yes, they are.
By them allowing someone to literally pass your guard before the guard is passed, you will begin to familiarize yourself and start to become okay with the idea that someone who you previously smashed on is now getting better and eventually will beat you because this will happen. That's very wise, because the day will come where they need to have this proper mindset. And whether they've done their homework and done their preliminary kind of foundation building in these mindsets and these rules will determine whether or not they stay on the mat or they go. And ultimately, if you compare yourself to the other people and you tap him, one day you're not tapping him, the next day he's tapping you. That's the moment where most guys quit, be honest. With our students, talk about it.
Yeah, I mean,
that's the moment.
Because you imagine winning for 4 years.
And then all of a
Or
sudden,
no, I'm sorry. Imagine not winning at all for the beginning, the white belt.
Yes.
You just get beat up.
Then you start
tapping.
tapping
And then all of a
guys.
sudden one day you start to like, not lose so much and you start winning. And then you only win.
Tapping everybody you roll with.
And that's just, you went from 0 to this, and now you're feeling good about yourself.
Yeah, 35 years old, 37 years old, you're
The
peaking.
question is, how long do you expect that to go for?
Where you keep beating everyone who steps in the building.
How long? I myself can beat everybody in this building, but I'm already behaving as if I can't.
Dang.
So I already roll today sometimes, let's just say every other day, where I'll roll and I won't tap people out. I'll let them take my back and choke me and beat me. So I worry less about winning, and I worry more about kind of allowing myself to lose and learning their attacks. So when the day comes where I'm forced and I really can't do anything at all, I've prepared myself.
So major, you
Setting
guys.
myself up.
Yeah, it's so major. And you
For
know
the point, right? The passing of the guard.
And here's the deal. The reason why you will fail and you will quit at the inflection point where you go from beating everybody to getting beat by the same people who you used to beat. The reason why you will quit is the ego. It's the ego and the expectation of yourself. And ultimately, you think that if you're not beating the people that you used to beat, you're failing yourself, and you're not fulfilling the expectation of yourself, which is beat everybody. And if you cannot acknowledge the ego, which is rule number 3.
Yes.
Acknowledge the ego. Acknowledge that the reason you will quit, acknowledge before it happens, the reason you will quit Jiu Jitsu is because the day will come where people that you used to beat, well, you will no longer beat. And at that moment, what do you think to yourself? I'm getting worse. Every day that I show up, I'm getting worse at Jiu Jitsu. And if you're getting worse, why should you show up?
Yeah. And the truth is, you're not getting worse.
I know.
You're not getting worse. You're only looking at yourself.
Yeah.
You need to acknowledge and say, you know what, it's possible at this, I started when I was 43 years old, let's say, or 23 or 33. It's possible that this 14-year-old kid that is now 27 has gotten much better.
Yes.
And everyone's just growing. So don't always tell yourself that, I'm not getting any good or I'm no good anymore. Instead, acknowledge that somebody else is climbing the ladder and they're putting in the hard work and that they deserve to win.
Yes.
They deserve to dethrone you in a sense.
An easy way for me to kind of compare it to is marathon times. When you first run the marathon, the very first time, you get in there, you're happy you just showed up. You're just happy you went to it.
Correct. You don't care what your time is.
You don't care what your time. I finished. That's amazing. That's the same thing coming to the academy. I don't care who I beat or I lose to. I'm there. I'm in the class. I'm in the room. I'm starting the journey. And then what happens? Every marathon you do, every year, the time gets a little bit better, 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 until one day.
Eventually, you reach your max time.
Yeah, well, because you're getting older now and your body's taking a little bit of a toll maybe, and it gets to a point where you hit your max. And then, you're however 35, 37, 40, 42, 45, whatever day that comes where that was your peak, the next year your time's a little bit less, but you're older. And then it's a little less time the next year, and you're even older, and you're a little bit less. There's a natural tendency to think, no, if I'm losing my times, I should stop altogether.
And these couple, no, you shouldn't. These couple of times that start going down, these years where you're starting to get a little slower, it might be a little bit of a sting at first.
Yes, it is.
The first, second year.
That's the quit factor.
But eventually you have to ask yourself, A, keep running marathons for the rest of my life, or B, never run again.
Because I'm letting myself down and my ego simply cannot take it.
Correct. And the best thing for you, all of you already know the answer,
Yes.
is not to stop running marathons for the rest of your life. Because how much do you enjoy? Remember why you started running marathons. Remember the feeling of the first marathon?
Yes.
It's the same as the feeling of the first day you walked on the mat.
It's just so dope. It's a journey, you guys. So here's the bottom line. Things which matter most should never be at the mercy of things which matter least.
Things which matter most should never be at the mercy of things which matter least.
So what matters least in this equation? Or better yet, what matters most? That you have a life of Jiu Jitsu and all the positive things Jiu Jitsu brings on and off the mat, relationships, health, business, everything you can imagine. Everything is better with Jiu Jitsu in life.
What matters least
is the fact that you got tapped by someone who you previously used to tap.
Or you couldn't pass someone's guard that you always pass.
Who cares? Who cares? You guys, acknowledge the ego early so when it shows up at your doorstep on that moment of inflection where you stop meeting your expectations that you previously met, you do not allow yourself to be overtaken and quit because of the unchecked ego. Rule number 3, acknowledge the ego.
And if you do this, you're very set up for rule number 4.
Respect the roller coaster that is Jiu Jitsu and the journey. Rule number 4, you guys, everyone who ever gets a black belt has what I call the black belt bounce back factor. Which means what? Life happens. Things are gonna happen. You're gonna stub your toe. You're gonna hurt yourself. You're gonna fall off a ladder and freaking break your femur.
You're gonna
Who
move.
knows? You're gonna get in a car accident. You're gonna have a kid. You're gonna get a new job in another state. Something will happen that'll pull you away from Jiu Jitsu. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, or in my case when I had back surgery, 10 months, no training. Now, maybe if I had a life outside of Jiu Jitsu, I would have quit. Or maybe if it wasn't my family business, I would have quit. Or maybe if I was good at anything else, I would have quit. So for me, automatically, I had no choice. I got drawn back in, and here we are today. But for other people, you know, we've had instructors, we've had students who've had knee surgeries, 6 months, they cannot roll. But guess what? They're logging on, they're watching videos, they're checking it out, they're showing up to class, they're observing, and they're taking notes from the sidelines over here. And they're still, the energy is still there. And 6 months, as soon as the doctor gives them the note to go, they're back on the mat. But fascinatingly, other people will, you know, something will happen. They'll get in a car accident and, you know, they have to get their car. They don't have a car for 2 weeks. They don't have a car, no injury. And after 2 weeks, they don't come back to class. We never see them again.
Yeah.
They don't have the black belt bounce back factor.
And rule number 1, 2, and 3 are necessary to bounce back.
Yes.
Right? You have to have...
It's easy to quit on the bounce back or on that when the life happens. Correct. If you don't have rules
like,
1, 2, and 3.
For example, if you're already feeling frustrated that you can't pass certain people's guards anymore, and then you get hurt, you say, oh, I got hurt, I can't train anymore.
Yeah, I'm straight.
But the truth is, you're not stopping because of the injury. You're stopping because you don't want to go back and face the fact that somebody might have passed you and is now...
Who wasn't supposed to.
Yes.
And what's crazy is that moment, something that mattered least shattered hopes and dreams for what mattered most, and that is the life of Jiu Jitsu. Now, why is it that people put so much emphasis on passing the guard or submitting people that they've previously submitted? Because a lot of instructors at a lot of academies will say, yo, he passed your guard, he's a purple belt, you're a black belt, what's wrong with you?
Well,
take this off, homie. Take this off.
Hold on.
No, let me say, I'm the teacher. Take it off.
Okay.
And then they give it to the other. It's
Now,
crazy. This is a Brazilian crazy like mindset, but this happens in different academies. We're not saying it happens everywhere, and it certainly doesn't happen here, but we are saying that there's some people who put so much on the belt that you could be the old, out of shape, you know, black belt. You better beat every purple belt, or guess what? You're not even worth being on the mat.
And instructors do this not even knowing sometimes. Because even if you just see 2 people sparring and you say, hey, you know, nice guard pass or nice sweep, just by praising the guard pass, you are in a sense condemning the other person for allowing the guard to be passed.
Instead of saying to the bottom person, hey, nice flow, keep it moving, good movement, guys.
Or, I like how you controlled the guard for the first 30 seconds.
Yes.
The fact that he passed doesn't really matter. Soon you'll have an even better guard. But the problem is we always praise, or nice arm lock.
Yes.
Not good job defending the first 3 arm lock attempts.
Yes.
So there you go. So now what happens is everybody wants the good job. They want the praise.
If that only comes with the submission and domination.
Or the sweep. So people fight for those 3 things. And then when they get the shorter end of those 3 things, they beat themselves up.
So what are you saying to instructors out there? Because this video was mainly for students initially, but you just flipped the script on us. Tell them.
Well, I'm saying that if you're a jiu-jitsu teacher, be careful on always saying, hey, good arm lock, good sweep. And then even sometimes there's a frustration behind somebody getting tapped. When you see someone get arm locked, and you're like, man, you know, keep your elbow in.
What's wrong with you?
That right there is going to make that person, you know, fight 10 times harder, risk injury, and when they lose again, beat themselves up again and again. And then when they get injured, a small little finger injury, or when they move.
When the moment happens.
When they move because of their job, they now live 25 minutes away, not 5.
They're not going to make the drive.
Well, they're going to say, you know what, it's too far for me.
But it's not the real reason.
Yes, it's the fact that they keep getting mentally and beat up by their instructor and by themselves. But if you think about it, John Boyd drove 2 hours to class.
Every time for 20 years.
And now you have somebody who lives 25 minutes and they want to quit, but they're lying. It isn't about.
It's not about drive. It's not about money. It's not about drive time. It's not about anything. It's not about family, business, injury. People who want to train make time to train. The reason they don't make time is not because of anything other than their egos were not checked, and the instructors, the very people who actually, if you ask, want their students to train forever. The people who want their students to train forever the most are, that's why we're making this video.
Correct.
A lot of the instructors out there who want their students to train the most are the reasons why their students are quitting, because they don't understand these concepts. And then when they're only praising the smash, the pass, the submission, or the sweep, they're not praising the flow, the allowance, the cooperation, and the longevity of the session.
And if the student said to the instructor, you know what, man, I'm just tired of getting swept every day and I can't escape that person's side control, I'm always stuck, the instructor would say, you know what, that's part of the game. They would not condemn you for leaving for that reason.
Yes.
But yet they don't act as if it's part of the game in their comments
when they're watching.
When you're in the moment.
Yes, the moment gets overwhelmed, emotional.
Correct.
Because the instructor
is identified
as the person who's doing it.
You represent me.
Yes, a reflection of me. So you got to get out right now. The problem is that they both represent me, and homeboy's on top is stronger, heavier, faster, more athletic, or more skilled. Then the guy who other represents you is going to be disappointment to you. If you let that come out emotionally, you're robbing your students of a life of jiu-jitsu benefit.
What's the analogy? The instructor, you're harming yourself.
Yes.
And then people wonder, how can an instructor be a black belt teaching for 10 years and only have 62 students?
Yes, that's how. You guys, the day will come for all of us. And what's crazy is that above everything else, there was one example that sets the standard. And that's rule number 5, follow the leader. Grandmaster Helio Gracie, training till he was 95 years old. And when he was 95, he was not sweeping, submitting, smashing, and passing anybody. At 95, he would say, you, come here. A little bit heavier, strong guy, come here with a smile. Lay down, go, attack. He would have, you don't translate that, attack. And you would mount on top and you'd be attacking. He'd be like this, defending from your mount. Mount attacks, you would just defend, defend, defend. 1 minute later, he said, okay, get off. And in his mind, he won.
Correct.
He won.
Yeah.
He just submitted that person with a flying triangle in his mind. Yeah.
Well, no,
why?
Well, not in his mind. He actually did for real.
He actually did for real.
Because he is 90 years old.
Yes.
And that person's 37 and they're 80 pounds heavier.
Yes.
So they're like a rainbow belt or like a silver gold belt compared to his red belt.
Yes.
They're way beyond.
They're way beyond. And athleticism and age advantage,
So
the guy is
skyrocketed.
skyrocketed. So in his mind, he did amazing.
Not in our minds.
Imagine if Helio Gracie at 95 years old expected a performance from himself that he was capable of delivering when he was 25. Imagine if he expected the 25-year-old Eddie when he was 95. The same delivery, tap the same people, beat up on his sons, choke his grandsons, manage everything, choke everybody, tie both arms, challenge all of Brazil. She actually did, by the way. Front newspaper page, both hands tied, I'll challenge anybody who can beat me, I'll give you 10,000 cruzeiros. Nobody ever showed up for the challenge. Imagine if that Helio expected to be around when he was 95, that same delivery, that same effect, and that same smashing capability. Would he still be training? No!
Now, my question for you is, at what point in Helio's life did he begin to invest in the technique and the tools and the understanding that he needed to have to be able to say, hey, you, 25-year-old, come mount me?
Right.
When did he start training that? When did he start?
I don't know.
The first day he stepped on the mat.
With the student.
Correct. The first day he ever walked on the mat, he already started, number one, putting what first? Survival.
Yes.
And by putting survival first, he didn't put his prime where he was fighting professionally first. He put the beginning, young teenager learning to survive and not get beat up. He put, as an instructor, defending his art against all challengers. And then he put, once he was done fighting and just retired, being on the mat, sharing his insights.
Boom.
He put that final chapter of his life and the beginning chapter before the middle chapter. But then again, not really, because even the middle chapter is survival. So because survival is his core,
yes,
he was able to do jiu-jitsu from 0 to 100. And you know what's wild is that this is what you have to do. You have to make jiu-jitsu your core in this. And when I say jiu-jitsu, I mean survival, because jiu-jitsu is survival.
That's what's up.
Jiu-jitsu is not offense, it's not attack, it's not submissions, it's survival. So putting jiu-jitsu first, which means survival first, you are gonna be much more set up to train for the rest of your life. And you're gonna avoid what? Jiu-jitsu tapping you out.
Yes.
Because jiu-jitsu, the way that most people see it, is not as an art of survival.
Yes.
It's go forward, get an arm lock, get a choke.
Yeah, UFC.
So that type of jiu-jitsu will end up tapping you out, which at the age of 37, 48, 56, you're gonna step off the mat because you lost track of what jiu-jitsu really is.
And you're losing to yourself.
And 10 times worse than losing to Joe when I spar right now in 10 minutes.
Young buck who came up and is really good.
Correct, is me losing to myself. I beat myself up, and because of me, I'm not gonna be appreciating jiu-jitsu when I'm 87 years old with my grandchildren.
It's the ultimate loss. It's the ultimate tap out. You don't train anymore. You robbed yourself of jiu-jitsu. You guys, the day will come for every one of you, if it hasn't already, that you will need to adopt this philosophy if you plan on following the leader and training till you're 95. And trust me, you want to train when you're 95. Even those of you out there who don't train yet, but have never done jiu-jitsu, you want to be training jiu-jitsu when you're 95.
You want to be walking around the mat just giving your advice to all the 34-year-olds and 22-year-olds.
Imagine the grandkids. The day will come when you need this advice, and it will determine whether or not you train for the rest of your life or not. Let's hope that you saw this video in time and you follow the rules. Rule number 1, know your Boyd belts. Rule number 2, pass the guard, accept it. They're coming up and it's okay. Rule number 3, acknowledge the ego, because if you don't, when the guard passing takes place, you will quit to yourself. Rule number 4, respect the roller coaster, highs and lows, and have that black belt bounce back factor. And rule number 5, follow the leader and you're gonna be okay. Dang. The day will come. We hope they have it.
We hope that this, lit a little fire underneath you. Because it's true that some people might have heard this in and out.
Yes.
And you might watch this video again, 8 months later, and it might stick. The question is,
there are people who have already quit because they did not know the 5 rules
correct
to roll with for the rest of their lives.
Send this to your friends that already quit.
And when you guys see this video, who've already quit and lost to yourselves,
go back and beat yourself.
Change your mind, change your life. You guys, now that we've got the talking out of the way, there is one technique that our grandfather used to the very end to submit the youngest, baddest, buffest guys who came into the academy. Lay down real quick, let's show them. Lay down real quick.